All right, so if you want to learn how to tag your tracks and add metadata to the music that you're submitting to music libraries, this is the instructional video for you to watch, okay? Now, every music library is going to have their own unique tagging system, okay? So what I'm going to teach you here in this video is actually only specific to one of the music libraries that I currently submit to. So I am going to give you access to this spreadsheet so you can actually insert your own information and fill it out to the best of your abilities if you'd like to. But just be aware that even if you do preliminarily or do this before you are accepted by a music library and you're just kind of giving it to them to say, hey, I've also done the metadata for my music, it's possible and probably almost certain that they will want things to be done in a slightly different way. Now, maybe they will sort of grab your Excel sheet and put it in their database as they need to, or they might actually ask you to alter it. But with this sort of template that you're going to get here, this Excel sheet, you're going to basically have all the basics covered so that if things need to be adjusted, okay, you just need to adjust them to fit their current platform, but at least all the information is already there. Okay, so what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to walk you through all of the different columns here and all the different information that's included with this track. Actually, this is 3 tracks that I did. And basically just explaining to you how I'm setting this up. And you can certainly use this template for all the music that you create. Again, what I always say is, a lot of producers always ask me, Jesse, do I have to have the metadata before I submit to a library? No, you certainly don't. But just be prepared that they might ask you to start doing this. And if they do, you've got this ready to go. And so sometimes it's really good to have this stuff done beforehand. Other times it's not really worth it until you get the acceptance letter from that particular library, because they might tell you exactly how they need the metadata to be structured. And some libraries actually handle the metadata themselves, mostly because they've probably experimented with trying to let producers do it themselves, but they don't fill it out the right way. They don't give the right kind of information. And the libraries, that's really their field of expertise. They really know what they should be doing to make sure that their tracks are organized on their platform, okay? So if you see on the left side here, we have the title column. And as you can guess, these are the titles of my tracks. Now, each track has multiple versions, as you can see. I have a full version, which I just call the title of the track, but then I have a 15-second, a 30-second, 60. D&B is how this library wants us to label drum and bass. You're usually going to want to do a drum and bass mix of your track, no matter what you do. No leads, we take out any of the high instruments, any of the lead synths or lead guitars, anything that's up there in the high registers. If there are vocals on your track, you want to have a version that's obviously without vocals, so it's just going to be vocals or instrumental version. And then we also have a sting version here. So this is absolutely going to give us all the options to be able to serve our music library client in the best of their ability. And for each song, you can see we do the exact same thing. Okay, so they're all basically, it's a sort of, once you get the formula down, you can use the same thing for every track that you do. Now, that one's the title column. Then next we have the edit length. And so obviously we have the full for the first one. And as you can guess, 15, 30, 60. Now, drum and bass, that is the full length of the track. So that one we do call full. Okay, so I'm not cutting down the track at all with that one. No leads, no vocals, those are both full. And then sting, we just put sting in there, okay? So there you go, there's one to just show with the edit length. Album, now if you put together, let's say a hybrid rock orchestral album, then that's what you would put here. I put MLB rock because this is for a specific pitch that I was doing with one of my library partners. They wanted rock music that was going to be pitched for the MLB network, Major League Baseball. And so that's what the album was called. So whatever album you're working with, basically just title it the genre essentially. So if you're doing like a retro, 80s synthwave thing, call it that. If it's hip hop rock hybrid, call it that. And you basically are going to use the same title for the entire, 2 or 3 tracks or maybe the full album, whatever you've done, right? Era, usually I want to separate this by decade. So if it's after 2000, I usually just put the 2000s. Some libraries might even want you to go from 2000s, or they might want to differentiate 2010 and beyond if it's a little bit more modern. Again, you have to ask them. A lot of libraries that I work with, they usually just think if it's modern, you just put 2000s, meaning it's just within the last 20 years, this is all modern stuff. If you're doing, again, a retro 90s sound, you would put 90s here, et cetera, right? Explicit, are there any bad words, curse words, anything like that? No. And I don't recommend you do anything with curse words or bad words in the licensing business, only because 90% of the time they're going to come back and say, we like your track, but there's all these cuss words and bad things being said on there. We can't put that on the air. Give us a clean version. So I would just always create clean tracks no matter what you do. Public domain, are you using music that's in the public domain? This is probably going to be 100% of the time, no, you're not using anything that's in there. The only difference or exception would be if, let's say, you're doing like a Christmas cover album, and this is all old school public domain Christmas music that's available to anybody that they can cover. That's when you would say yes. But for the most part, we're creating 100% original music, right? The Q type, obviously this is going to be instrumental. Now, if you have vocals, you want to put vocal here, okay? But for most of the music that I do, it's all instrumental. Even if you have a vocal lead, a hey, a ho, or, you know, this and that, or vocal samples, that's not a vocal track because you're treating your vocals as just more of a lead instrument. So it still would be called an instrumental, even if there are a couple of vocal sounds on there. The only way you call it a vocal is if there's like, you know, lyrics, a verse lyrics, chorus lyrics, right? There's kind of a hook. There's a little bit more of that kind of commercialized aspect of the vocals. If it has vocals, no. Now I'm putting no because there is actually no lead vocals in here, okay? If there's just like a lot of these ones, they just had either a hey or a yeah or something like that. I'm not counting that as vocals because that's really just more of a sample performance. It's just kind of more of a lead accent that I'm putting on there. Not unless there's like a significant, like if you have a choir or you know, somebody really singing like the main melody of your track, then you probably want to put that in the vocal category. But if you don't have those things, then you certainly don't want to. Now the tempo, I do have a few different categories that I will include with the Excel sheet that you can get underneath this video. For all of these tracks, they were in the very fast column, but there's a, you know, a slow, a medium, a fast, and then a very fast. So basically, depending on where your track is, you can use any one of those categories that you need to, okay? And then obviously for your BPM, you need to put the actual BPM of your track. Don't guess. If you don't know what it is, go back into your session and actually get the actual BPM. You really need to do that. If you have an artist that performed on your track, let's say you brought in some singer or a rapper or somebody that came in, that's where you would put this in. For my music and my career, again, I rarely ever do anything like that. It's usually just me, 100% me, producing, mixing, and mastering it all. Composer, that's where you put your first and last name. Description, now this is a tricky one because, again, this is one of those things where every library will have their own unique twist on this and where they want you to sort of put your information in there. So this is sort of the structure that we use with this library, but again, it could be different for where you use, but you usually just have 2 sentences. And so the track is comprised, for this track, it was like a rock track, punchy distorted guitars, live drums, and live bass, okay? Ideal for energetic, confrontational, party scenes. If you want to switch this stuff out, basically what you would do is, if you can see here, comprised of, you would basically delete that and you would put in the sort of main things that stick out in your track. Let's say you're doing like a synth wave sort of a track. So you would say of 80s synth chords, you know, maybe synth bells and driving electronic drums, something like that, right? So you basically just want to get to the, if somebody was clicking play on your track for the first time, what are the main things that would pop out to them sonically? And this is about their instruments, okay? So the sentence here is the track is comprised of, so what are the sort of characteristic things that you would basically associate with your track right off the bat when you heard it, right? And then ideal for what kind of scenes, like what kind of TV shows, what kind of promos, what kind of commercials would it really work for? So again, this is more of an energetic, up-tempo, fast, kind of a fun track. So energetic, confrontational, party. It has a little bit of a celebration, kind of recklessness feel to it. So a party scene could be it. Maybe you produced a sad, depressing song. So you need to have, you know, ideal for depressing, sad, grief-stricken, you know, scene, something like that. So you need to sort of like really be the objective critic in your own mind, right? And listen to your track objectively and realize, where would this be placed? Okay, this is why one of those things where what you think it would be placed in and what the library would think your track would be placed in can be completely different. So this is the kind of stuff that might be up in the air. And they might say, hey, thanks for giving us the information, but we're going to change what you said there because we feel like your track would be better for these kind of scenes. And they're usually better at that stuff because this is what they live and breathe all day long. Moods. So this is the one where you can just, it's similar to what we did here with the scenes. You sort of list the sort of emotions or the feelings or the sort of general themes that you get from the track that you heard. So this one, obviously energetic, confrontation, tension, party. These two are a little bit more similar. So it's energetic, confrontation, tension, and determination. So there's a sense of seriousness with this track. This one was a little bit more fun sounding, a little bit more reckless sounding, right? So there's a slight difference in the sort of way that these would be marketed. And I would list, you know, probably 4 or 5 in this category for sure. Genre, obviously, that's pretty straightforward. Rock, hip hop. If it's a hybrid, you should put both of them in. So if it's hip hop rock, put hip hop rock, right? So list all the genres that are really being included there. Instrument type. So If it's a live band playing a rock song, then obviously you're going to do something like band. Guitar is kind of the main instrument. Let's say it's a hip hop track. Well, it might be DJ, scratching, electronic, right? If it's EDM, definitely electronic, definitely DJ. If it's orchestral, you're going to put orchestral, trailer music would be orchestral. And so, et cetera, et cetera. So basically, whatever genre you're working in, you kind of want to zero in on what is the main kind of instruments that are being played in this track, and I want to basically list that. So if somebody's like, hey, I want like a track from a band or something like that, they can type that in and then your tracks pop up. That's why you want to have this kind of information. Production type. This is one of those, again, where there are so many different places that you can go with this. And so it's one of those things where it's like you can do your best, but you're going to have a library that is going to tell you like, hey, this is what we want you to do. But for this library, they want me to sort of figure out where I think my tracks would best fit, like what kinds of TV shows, productions, that kind of thing, and genres of TV shows that would actually work best for my tracks. So I have listed commercial, action, adventure, and sports. This is obviously for MLB, so obviously I put sports in there. So if you feel like your track has a lot of that, like, up-tempo energy and tension and motivation, maybe action and adventure kind of feels like that's more like where you would be. If it's got like that corporate sort of uplifting, optimistic feeling about like, a bright future or something like that, maybe you feel like it's more commercial, it's more for advertising, right? You can do something like that. So again, use your best judgment, but you're going to find that the library is probably going to steer you in the direction that they need you to be steered in, okay? The style of. Find the most popular artists you can think of to put in this category. Don't list obscure artists that maybe you think are great, but the general world is not aware of. Every artist that you put in here should be an artist that at least is a household name, that almost everybody who's familiar with rock knows who these artists are, right? Foo Fighters, Green Day, Rise Against. If you're into rock, you know who these bands are. And if somebody's like, hey, I want a kind of a crazy rock band Foo Fighters song, they'll type that in and boom, my track pops up. So you want to be, probably 2 or 3 is pretty much all you really need. But you want to use the most recognizable and easily accessible bands that you can think of. If it's obscure, nobody's going to be searching for it. That means your track's not going to be found. So use really popular artists that are at least similar. They don't have to be identical to your sound, but you could say like, well, this is kind of like Linkin Park. I'll put Linkin Park, right? Linkin Park is a big brand name. Everybody knows Linkin Park. So use those kind of names, right? Now, catch-all, these are just basically words you can use to describe the track in the most broad sense that you possibly can. So the first one is energy, hard rock, driving, Foo Fighters. I felt like if you were typing in any of those, my track is what you would be looking for. So it can include the artists, it can include some of the energy, or the emotions, the moods, the instruments. Basically, this is kind of like a collection and a combination of all the other metadata that we've put in here before. And this can be an extensive list. It doesn't have to be just 5. I think I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. I only have 4 here, but 5 here. So it can be, 5. It can be 10. You can do a lot more if you want. But just basically sort of like the big catchwords that would really drive somebody to your track, right? Then you're going to put your first name, your last name, your PRO affiliation. This is where your BMI, which I am, you would put BMI, ASCAP, PRS, SOCAN, wherever you are in the world, this is where you put your affiliation. You need to get that CAE and IPI number. Okay, you need to go to your PRO's website and look that up. If you don't know how to find it, you can call them. You can go on your online account. A lot of ways to do it, but make sure you list that here. And of course, you're going to be 100% writer, right? Now, if you're splitting, you can definitely create more columns and call it first writer, second writer, right? And that way right here, it's going to be 50% to you, 50% to another writer, or if you guys split it a different way, you can do that as well. But I'm assuming if you're watching this, you're probably just composing most of your tracks by yourself. You're just going to throw that 100% writer. So with this information and with this Excel sheet that you can now start inputting your information, you can literally send this along either with your submission to kind of show them that like, hey, I'm super serious and I'm ready to go and I'm prepared and I'm giving you all my metadata ahead of time and we can either adjust this or you can tell me what I need to do. You can do that for sure along with your submission when you first submit. Or what I think is probably the better thing is to say, I have the metadata available and I can put it in a format that you find useful and necessary if you decide to accept my music. So basically, you're kind of not like throwing a bunch of stuff their way in the beginning. You're just kind of like pitching, you're submitting. And if they accept you and want you, then you can basically put it in the ball's in their court. They can let you know, okay, great, send us your metadata. Let me see what you got. Or we're going to tell you what we need for our metadata. This is how we need to put this stuff together. So this is pretty much the basics of metadata. It's not complicated. It does take time. And it is one of those things that if you work with certain libraries and they require you to do it, take the time to get this stuff right, because some of them will go through and double check and like, okay, this wasn't as accurate, let me just fix that. Other times they just send this off to maybe somebody who's just like a front office worker, and maybe they're like, I don't care about this, I just want to go home, it's Friday at 5, right? You don't want your career in the hands of somebody like that. So you want to do the most work you possibly can if they want you to do the metadata. So you need to take your time and make sure you get this stuff right. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this really great tutorial.